Today we go to the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, and an exclusive interview with Haile Selassie's grandson. Prince BE'EDE MARIAM tells us about the day Ethiopia's last emperor was overthrown by the military in 1974. When the soldiers came for Emperor Haile Selassie, the prince, who lived in the palace, volunteered to stay with his grandfather so he wouldn't be alone. The teenage prince paid dearly for that act of loyalty. He was detained for 15 years. I'm Martine Dennis, and this is a special edition of Africa Here and Now, which we recorded on a fairly noisy hotel terrace in Addis. Prince BE'EDE MARIAM Makonnen Haile Selassie, thank you very much for talking to Africa Here and Now. You are the grandson, one of the grandsons of the last emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie.
Yes.
Your father was Prince Makonnen.
Yes. My father is the second son of Emperor Haile Selassie. And they were very close, obviously. And he died in a car accident after my christening.
How old were you?
45 or 6 days. I grew up with my grandfather because when my father passed away, he took us all under his wing. And I used to live, I think the palace, you can visit the palace now. And I grew up in my grandmother's bedroom, so next to him.
So your father was, I've read, was the emperor's favourite son.
So they say.
So they say.
Yeah, because I was 40 days, so.
So you were not now. Do you have any recollection of your father?
No, in 40-something days.
No.
My grandfather was my father, and he talked about him a lot and how he, for instance, prevented him from going hunting, and how he criticized him once and he stopped after that.
So basically, Haile Selassie was your father.
Yes.
So what was he like then, as a substitute father, but as your grandfather? What was he like?
He must have spoiled him because I got everything I wanted. He's a person of details, what you ate, what you did, and everything else. And more importantly, I'm not sure you'd find many Ethiopian fathers who would explain to you, for instance, about wars or political events as if you're not a kid.
That's what he did.
Yes. He would argue on any topic and never tell you you understand it later.
Oh, even as a young boy.
Yes. He was mostly, when you discuss with him, he was the devil's advocate. For instance, when he was angry, if you said, no, you're not right, he would stop there. Not because he was not right, but because he wanted you to challenge things. But generally, he was understanding, and he never liked to be late.
A man after my own heart.
If he's late, the ADC and the drivers and so on gets
told off. So he was very punctual.
always.
He was a man of great detail.
Man of habit too. For instance, although he didn't have a boss, there would be no way he would not be at his office, because the official hours then were 9 to 1 and 3 to 6. And in the morning, you can be sure at 9 he's at his office.
Discipline. So that's how you were brought up.
Yes, I'm not sure I am, but that's how I was.
But it sounds as though you got invaluable training from a very early age for eventually becoming a lawyer, which is what you did, right?
Yes, but when I decided to come back here, I graduated law. In fact, I did political science and African studies.
Following in the footsteps of your grandfather, who was a great Pan-Africanist, among the first, reputed Pan-Africanist.
Yes. Africa was at his heart. He never felt that any African country or African can be sustained by itself. So he believed since early that collective action was a way out, because individually we didn't have the capacity to change.
And it's obviously still a concept now that many African countries aspire to, but we're not really getting there, are we?
I don't want to name names because politically it may not be correct. But when you see the AU versus other regional
Blocs,
I think the AU is doing a fair job. Not individual countries, but when you look at the bloc, I think they try to do a good job, because I know other blocs don't do as well.
I think a lot of people would argue with you, though, Prince, that especially when it comes to conflict resolution, that the AU hasn't got a single purpose and certainly doesn't have the resources to manage a conflict on the continent, so provide an African solution to an African problem.
Was Pretoria not a good example?
Is Pretoria holding?
There are no more deaths. I mean, they were in thousands a day. So you have to look at what it prevented, not only that it was reached 100%.
Pretoria, of course, was the agreement reached in South Africa, which effectively ended this awful, the devastating war in the north of Ethiopia with Tigray, the TPLF.
And it was an African affair.
It was an African affair. Fair enough. Point taken.
And just give me an example of a piece that was 100% executed as it was meant to be. From today's examples all the way to the First World War.
They're flawed.
Yes.
They're flawed, by definition,
Don't pick on Africans because...
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your imperial childhood, because that I find fascinating. So you're a little boy. You are having fairly grown-up conversations with your grandfather. What was life in the palace like? Did you go outside to school, or were tutors brought into the palace?
Yes, in fact, I went to the Lycée Gabriel, French school here, because his educators were French Catholics. So I was sent to the lycée. My schoolmates would testify that once I got to the school, there was no difference between people, of course, knew. But, I mean, no guards, no nothing.
You were just a regular kid attending the lycée.
Those that are old enough to have witnessed that time would realize that you didn't need any bodyguards to go around. It was relatively peaceful.
And were there other children in the palace, or were you, because obviously your parents had more than one child, yeah?
Yes, because my brothers left early. I was brought up when my last brother left. My grandfather asked me, whom from the family do you want to have here? And asked me this was the governor of Tigray, his son. He was married to the granddaughter of my grandfather. So he came and from, let's say, he had all his high schools at the palace with me.
Okay.
And when one of my cousins was not feeling well, her daughter came to the palace as well. So first we were two of us, then the three of us.
So you weren't a lonely child?
No, because he made sure each time when someone left and so on, he asked.
Another child would come, another family would come to the palace.
Yes.
Did you have meals alone with your nannies, or did you sit with the emperor?
The kids were separately, in part as well, because we had to go to school earlier, and we had to go to sleep earlier as well, in part because of that. We ate separately, but when we went abroad with him, we would eat together.
So you travelled quite a bit.
Not quite a bit, but a couple of times I did travel with him.
Was he particularly religious? Did you have a very observant household?
Oh yes, oh yes. I mean, he would not leave Addis for international flights without going to church. And when he came back, the first place he would go was to church. And every Sunday he would go to
This is the Ethiopian Orthodox Church,
this.
which we can hear behind us now. Okay, so we need to move on, I guess, to the political happenings, the seismic shift in Ethiopian politics, which of course affected you and your entire family. We're talking about 1974. Can you remember what happened on the very day?
Obviously, when a government stays too long in power, there's a tendency of getting lax. It was no exception, because there were things that didn't work out. For instance, there was a famine. He visited Wollo a month earlier, and they showed him around without showing him that particular region. Fortunately, every afternoon he used to go to town, around town, and he saw refugees from Wollo. They were in one of the exits of Addis. People destitutes, and he asked where they came from. They said Wollo. He said why? They said there was famine, and he couldn't believe it because he was a month earlier. He was there. Unfortunately, he took the government car and the government, and he said he didn't farm it. So it was a bit disingenuous, but there were other things. For instance, in 1973, there was the oil crisis.
Yes.
Suez Canal was locked down, and so on. All these had economic impact, of course. And to this day, I feel that maybe the student movement and so on didn't see peace as a very high in the agenda.
We're talking obviously about the regime that came to be known as the Derg, which effectively removed the emperor and the imperial class from ruling Ethiopia, a dynasty that had been in charge effectively for 3,000 years. Yeah. So this is a seismic change. Where were you? I mean, you would have been a teenager.
Yes.
And how did this affect you? How did this momentous occasion actually impact you?
My grandfather, at night, he used to pour milk and honey himself, and we drank before we said good night.
Oh, right.
And usually there were many of us. That night we were only two. And he said, only two of you today? That was the very day I was supposed to ask him to go to Magale. He said, no, I can't do this because he'd be alone. I knew there would be a dethronement and so on.
So you were aware, yes.
Those years, I didn't want him to be alone. And unfortunately, I didn't stay even a night with him after he was deposed. We were put in separate places.
Did soldiers come to the palace?
Oh, yes.
With guns?
Well, they didn't come in to talk to him with guns, but they came in and said this minister had done this and so on, and they took them prisoners. And finally, it was time for them to depose him. And one of the good things I liked, he said, if it is for the good of the country, why not? And when it came, he didn't back off.
He didn't resist, huh?
Yeah. He said, but if you don't deal well with the people and situation, my story would come back and yours would go down the street.
Among these soldiers who came to the palace for this conversation was Haile Mariam Mengistu.
On that day, no, it's ironic because he never addressed him except as emperor, even to his last days.
Respectfully.
He saluted and talked to him very respectfully. Doesn't mean that the end didn't come via him. It was not in the action that when it comes to respect and so on.
So he showed all sort of elements of respect at the same time as driving this. Yeah. And then you were detained. You and your grandfather, Haile Selassie, were detained, but separately.
Separately. They put us in my father's house, which is the residence for the ex-president Dr. Mulatu, and ex-prime minister, the one you know, Haile Mariam. They live in that compound. We were under house arrest in that place for 10 months. Then we were taken to the Unity Park.
Yes.
Have you seen the underground? I was there for, where prisoners stayed.
Yes.
I was there for 2 years and 10 months with my brothers and cousins, 6 of us. And on top, they had their meetings. So when there was skirmishes, an armored car would come and be parked just at the door, saying, if things go wrong, you will be the first ones. Then after 2 years and 10 months in our own house, there was a place called Alambata, meaning the end of the world. There we stayed 12 years.
And how were you treated?
I mean, I came back to Ethiopia because I thought Ethiopians were fair, in the sense that the prisoners, they are prisoners like us, but they felt at least we are accused of something. You are not. So they felt sympathetic. And even the cruelest of gods would say this is unjust. So the sense of justice of the people really stunned me.
But on a daily basis, I mean, how were you treated? This is a young man now who's being deprived of his liberty, being deprived of so much.
For about 12 years, fortunately, as I said, the warden and so on were human. Otherwise, we were put in a prison that we could only see the sky. Throughout is blood. And we couldn't go out because someone told the warden at the time that a helicopter can come and take us. So we were locked in. But a sympathetic officer was the director of the prison school. And the prison school had up to the end of high school. And for 5 years or so, that high school was the best in Ethiopia.
Really?
The reason being that there imprisoned so many intellectuals. You can have a teacher who is very good, and tutors,
So it's like a university in many ways.
Yeah. So it was like, private school or something.
So you studied?
Yes. I finished my high school in prison.
And obviously during this time, your grandfather, Haile Selassie, died.
Yes.
And is there clarity as to what actually happened?
Well, there was a trial in which in which people were accused and sentenced. It was obvious that they tried a couple of things and it didn't work out. Poison, electrocuting. So finally it was physical asphyxiation.
Do you feel now, do you feel bitter about having had 15 good years of your young life effectively taken away from you?
No, I don't feel bitter, and that's why I came back to my life here. Because, as I said, so many people, I'm indebted to so many people who didn't know me before and were very nice to us. So I don't, and I feel that bitterness in terms of modern explanation. It's like your computer being full of information and it's not acting,
Rationally.
fast. Fast. It's slower and more. But hatred for me is like a virus. It attacks yourself rather than anybody else.
So just to explain, once the Derg fell in 1991, you left the country.
We were allowed to leave the country, again, thanks to the UK ambassador who asked me less personally, and we were given passports and visas and so on. So we left. And I finally ended up in Toronto at York University. I did my degree in African Studies and International Relations, and I came back, claimed my hotel, and got it back.
Because a lot of the property that was owned by the imperial family was seized effectively, wasn't it?
Yes.
But you managed to get one. You managed to get your one hotel back, and that's what you do today. You run your hotel.
Yes.
And any regrets? Do you have any regrets?
Regrets, because it was a conscious decision to be with my grandfather. It didn't end up the way I thought it would. But it's not because I did not see it coming. It is because I made a deliberate decision to stay with him so that he's not ill.
I'm quite curious as to the role of the imperial family now in modern Ethiopia.
When the palace was inaugurated a few weeks back, we were invited and we were part of the celebration. We were given a prominent place.
And also, I think it was 2019 was when the statue of Haile Selassie was erected. The first statue, I believe, of him since his death.
Yes.
What does that signify to your mind?
Two things I want to say. The first thing is that I am grateful to Africans that were cognizant of the fact that he played a role in instituting the OAU, later the AU, and the fact that it was the Ghanaian president that said Nkrumah didn't do this alone, because the statue of Nkrumah was there. He could have just had a shut up, but he raised the issue, and the prime minister then followed through. He said, "We'll do it," and the current prime minister as well asked for it, so it is done.
So Haile Selassie's legacy, would you say, is now recognized? Has he been given the true respect that he deserves?
I don't know, but it's a far cry from the previous administration in terms of recognizing history.
How would you assess the legacy of Haile Selassie in your own terms?
When it comes to Ethiopia, I think many people talk about his role in education without talking about his role in having the laws and the attempts to have a rule of law, parliamentary system. Was it perfect? No, it was not. But at least the start was with him. So I think as the days go, it will definitely be recognized.
Your Imperial Highness Prince BE'EDE MARIAM Makanan Haile Selassie, thank you very much. I recorded that interview with the Prince on January the 28th this year when I was in Addis Ababa. If you enjoyed it and would like to hear more about significant historical moments in Africa, please let me know. Martine@AfricaHere&NOW.com's my email. You can get me on all the socials, Insta, Facebook, Threads and LinkedIn. I'm at Martine Dennis on X. And if you haven't already, check out our show about the 1993 plane crash that took the lives of Zambia's national football team. Africa Here and Now is available on the major audio platforms as well as on your smart speaker. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and spread the love to your friends and colleagues. Our original music is by Emric Adam. Simon Elliott put the show together. My thanks to Prince BE'EDE, and of course, my thanks to you for your company.